My stupid ex tried to nurse a squirrel back to health in the car, and it woke up and climbed inside the steering compartment. We had to go to the firefighters for help getting it out. Thank you, Clippy profile picture. You are not the last of these we'll be seeing today. Hey fellas, Onus here, and welcome back to With a Y. And for the past few videos, I've been asking you for your stories on just like funniest things you've seen squirrels do. Things that make you think they're dumb as hell. This is like a continuation of the hamsters and goldfish die to literally anything style of video I've been doing. But the difference here is that these are typically wild animals. They're not domesticated in the way that the last two were. So I decided to broaden the scope because the death stories could be funny, but we're gonna be primarily just things you've observed from a distance if I had to guess. I've curated a good few here, and there is one post that I genuinely consider life-changing. So let's hop in. About 2 summers ago, a squirrel broke into my garage and found its way under my 500-pound freezer? I'm sorry, man. I just don't think, like, there's a normal need for you to have one of those. Like, most full-size fridges, you know, the ones that have a freezer built in, like, they weigh less than a person if nothing is inside them, and, like, they kind of need to if you want the movers to actually be able to put it in place. I'm assuming you were doing some sort of industrial shit in there, like maybe keeping, like, dead human remains in it. Like, you needed a freezer the size of a fridge, and the bigger the freezer, the harder it is to maintain. You were gonna have some cops knocking at your door for the electricity bill you were using, like, outside compared to the rest of your neighbors at some point. But yeah, the squirrel broke in there and then went under the freezer just to crush itself to death. Me and my family found out after we had to clear out the entire garage due to the rancid smell. See, if you just hadn't bought that 500-pound freezer that you need for unstated reasons, you wouldn't have been in this position. I physically don't know what you would have been doing for this sort of thing, because the only time I've ever needed to see, like, a freezer that can actually hold something bigger than a fucking chicken inside of it, like, a dead one, I mean, was one that needed to hold a bunch of chickens, you know, usually in multiple bits, like cut up and carved up and shit. And that was like a whole room. I can only imagine how much that shit weighed. I'm sorry you went through that. The smell must have haunted you for many, many weeks to months before you figured out what the hell had happened. And it was under the hardest thing to clean out inside the garage, the 500-pound freezer. I saw a completely white squirrel once. I'm Floridian. Okay, is this like a breed of squirrel? I gotta look this up. The eastern gray squirrel. Famous populations exist in North Carolina and Illinois, so seeing one in Florida must have been crazy. Maybe you had like one of the rare cases of albinism. I'm looking up white squirrels versus albino squirrels, and I guess how you tell is the eyes. Interesting stuff. Okay, this is from someone who is maybe the only submission we have of somebody who had the equivalent of a pet squirrel. We used to foster squirrels, and like I assume the rehabilitation, like they were injured in the wild and won't get better if you just leave them there sort of breed. Makes sense. So I actually have some stories of them. Thank you for your contribution, Moisture Bug. Once a squirrel named Oni, Finnish for luck, ironic, I know, got out of his cage and walked into the next room, just to jump on top of a very big aquarium and drown. That is a hamster-ass move if I've ever read about one, man. Like, I know some people who would literally buy aquariums for their hamster and then, like, use it as the hamster cage, but, like, leave the top with air holes, because if they used anything other than glass walls, then motherfuckers would find a way to climb out. And sometimes they still did and died in embarrassing ways. Anyways, back to the squirrel. There was no reason for him to do that, and that, in this case, is drown himself. There was no fish in there, and the worst thing is, he was supposed to be released back into the wild the next day. Next squirrel we had got named Pool. He lived happily though, didn't drown. I could flame you for a little bit on like how like the squirrel died, but I'm gonna be honest, I think like that one passed and you learned your lesson in an effective way. If Oni, however you say that Finnish word, does actually mean luck, I think you recognize the pattern that the thing you name them is something that will not be in their life. So you're like, the last one died from drowning, we're gonna have to name the next squirrel Pool. That way it doesn't die from jumping into one. If we don't name him after a synonym for luck, then he might actually have luck during his lifetime. That's fucking awful, man. That must have sucked a lot after spending the time nurturing the dude back to health. Like, I'm sitting here making my jokes, but I can only imagine, like, the type of person you have to be, like, taking in wildlife and trying to rehabilitate them so they can go back to the natural population. Losing one of them, like, that close to when they were meant to be released has to suck. I'm gonna be honest, guys. The stories do not get much brighter from here. When I was 8, my dad was renovating the house and discovered the bones of 2 squirrels under the attic floorboards. They'd likely been entombed there since the house was built in 1890. Jesus Christ, dude, you're living in a goddamn Luigi mansion. I always wondered if the builders could hear them afterwards and couldn't be bothered to remove them after the work was done. I mean, it was the fucking 1800s, man. It could have been anything back then. And when I say anything, I mean it could have been that they heard it and just didn't give a fuck because it seemed like a lot lot less people gave a fuck back then. It's like, dumbass squirrels shouldn't have been on the ground that we were laying a concrete foundation on. Idiots! Do they have concrete in the 1800s? Okay, yeah, it was used all over the place in the 1800s, so the joke stands! It also could have been like that they were drunk on the job and just didn't even like have the senses to even register if the squirrels were screeching. Like, I could think of 20 more alternate scenarios of like why it might have gone unnoticed, but it doesn't really matter, man. You're the one who ended up having to deal with it in their early childhood and have these thoughts into your adult life. Okay, I don't want to bury this too deep in the video, but I didn't want to do it first. I had like what I would consider to be, if not a life-changing comment, one that if posted anywhere else out of context other than like in a response to like a with a Y prompt, could have been like a legendary copy pasta. I would usually try to intersperse like the long blocks of text that I'm gonna read with some comment I have, and maybe I will during this, but this is like just so, I won't say well written, but it's so strikingly written that I like had to share this with people I was gonna be in Discord calls with after the first time I found it. From the Myrix, another clippy profile picture guy. When I was a kid, there was this outdoor cat in our neighborhood who was like the Punisher. You'd be walking around and just see a bird carcass strewn across 10 feet of sidewalk. It looked like the flood level in Halo Combat Evolved where the jackal corpse is in the hallway. Anyway, my house had a bird feeder which naturally attracted squirrels, so I had the grand displeasure of cleaning these carcasses. I swear to God, this cat didn't even eat them. She would just pull open their rib cage and start playing like it was a ball pit. It got to the point that my dad had to talk to the neighbors about their evil-ass vigilante cat. There's a technique in horror that you should not show the monster because whatever the audience comes up with will always be more scary. Seeing only the aftermath of this bizarro Batman feline was the scariest thing I've seen, more than any horror film. This is like where it devolves into just straight prose, man. Like, this guy has already finished his story, and then he's like, I need to give some literary analysis on the damn thing. It's a bright, sunny, suburban day. All the grass is perfectly trimmed like AstroTurf. The evenly spaced oak trees cast dappled shade onto the ground. You happily trot along the sidewalk, round the corner, and there's a smear of gore on the hot concrete. At first you think it's a mango someone curb stomped, but no, it is something that, at some point in its past, was a squirrel. It is a normal, joyous, uninteresting day in suburbia. Your neighbor comes out and greets you. You pretend to ignore the obvious corpse on the concrete. Eventually, after years of silence in the treetops, the carcasses of squirrels and birds alike becoming just as nostalgically suburban as lemonade stands and barbecues. They become another thing to power wash. Little more than an obstacle. What the fuck, dude? Like, I'm really curious if this guy just had this in the back pocket and was waiting for someone to pop the question on him. It's like, hey, you have any funny squirrel stories? I don't have just a story, I have a dissertation and analysis of what it did to me as a fucking individual. And honestly, like, as much as this seems like it's coming from a very personal place, it's hard to say it's not relatable, because even when I go on walks to this day, and when I just see like roadkill on the sidewalk, like, I get like noticeably fucking a little sad. Like, it dampens my mood. But at a certain point in your life, you realize things die every day, and like, you're gonna have to see some of that, and it fucking sucks, man. What am I gonna do? Change the route that I go for a walk on to get some sunlight every day with? No! I'm gonna have to walk past that corpse of an animal I didn't know but mourn slightly as having perceived it as dead. And then I'm gonna keep walking listening to whatever album I'm listening to. It just kind of made me think about the person I am today, because that is like a really baseline experience, I think, of like even places that are considered nicer. And maybe like riches are what get those things cleaned off before you even have to think about them. The small injustices in the world that you have no hope of completely mitigating. Anyways, everything is uphill from here. Not necessarily positive, but like, it doesn't get as fucking existential as that guy. I came home once to see a squirrel laying next to bushes at a sidewalk, sunbathing, and I thought it was really cute. What a half glass full mind you have. Like, if I see my cat laying in a weird position and I think like it's cute, I'm like, aw, but she lays in it for too long and I'm not sure she's asleep, I will try to wake her up to assuage my own fears that she passed when I wasn't looking. And then she'll jump up in a really funny way and it'll be like, oh, thank God, you scared me. Anyways, I managed to take a picture and send it to some of my friends and family, saying how cute it was. I think you know where this is going. Several days later, I went by there again. It was still there. Exactly the same position. It was then I realized I sent my friends and family a picture of a dead squirrel. The thing is, if you go by that place enough times, eventually it'll disappear, whether it was taken off by like a scavenger or city services. The real question is, did you end up telling the people that you sent that picture to that it's like, actually that was a dead squirrel? Or is in this video the first time you've admitted this story that like, I accidentally did that shit? I hope the latter is the case. A, because I get content content out of it, and it's a compelling storyline, but also, there's no reason to drag the people that you were trying to give a good moment in their day into the misery you realized you wrought. And also, I would like to send you my condolences for making this mistake, because it can happen to the best of us, man. I have never sent pictures of it to people, but like, I thought I saw an animal sleeping on a walk one day, because it was the first time I ever saw it there. It didn't have any visible trauma to its body, but I went there the next day and it was in the same position. I was like, oh, it wasn't as happy as the first time I saw this thing. All right, we gotta do at least one person whose fault it is. You know that the squirrel died. Two of my friends, friend A and friend B, and I stole friend B's mom's Audi and went spray painting places. Typical delinquent activity. None of us had a license at the time, so keep in mind these dudes were young doing stupid shit and, you know, maybe not like stuff that you can excuse, but stuff that like you might expect like a dumbass kid to do. We were looking for a new place to tag, so we decided to put the sports mode to use. And then the immediate next line is, we ran a squirrel over going 104 miles per hour. He might be okay if you just like scrape all the little gory bits off the wheels and then piece them back together like it's a game of Operation. And like the funniest bit in this story to me is that they were more concerned about like, fuck, there's blood stains on the car that we stole. Like joyriding in a car is a much more relatable thing, and these kids obviously didn't set out to fucking hit a squirrel that walked into the middle of the road. But Jesus Christ, is that gonna be the highlight of the day over the thing they were hoping it was gonna be? Anyways, we had to drive to a gas station to buy a 12-pack of water to wash the blood off of the bumper because it was 3 a.m. and the car wash was closed. Also, probably the time you had to do that if you wanted to tag and also get away with stealing the fucking car. Both things that I do not officially endorse, and I'm gonna say you shouldn't do. Just a hunch. Especially the stealing the car thing, man. Like, you guys could have gotten hurt. I'm sure they know that now. I'm not gonna lecture too hard. Maybe not the best idea to go somewhere public with your bumper covered in blood, now that I think about it. How much fucking blood is inside a squirrel that it covered the bumper, man? And like, it had to have been mid-hop in order to hit the bumper. Oh wait, no, you had like a nice Audi. It probably was like low as hell to the ground and it could have like just taken off the thing's head. I think the most you can hope with is that it was a merciful death. It was quick and it didn't feel much. We found the squirrel's body in the grass the next day, and half of that motherfucker's body was turned to mist on the road and dirt. All right, that was, you know, a good submission, like as far as content goes. Maybe not in what it's gonna do to my brain chemistry. Also, they ended the email with a very sweet, love the videos, man. I fucking can't with you fucking guys, dude. I fucking can't. You're insane. And slash pause, I guess. Maybe not to this guy in particular, but we'll say generally just for the sake of it. All right, we gotta move from a brutally killed squirrel to a thriving squirrel. My brother's college campus has an enormous squirrel. I'm genuinely surprised it can move at all. Something r/fat squirrel hate. If you guys need like somehow more of this where you're just like shitting on squirrels, that's the place to go, I guess. It got so fat because people kept feeding the squirrel, and the only reason it's not been caught by the local feral cat is because the cat is also gigantic and is too fat and lazy to hunt the damn thing. This is one of my favorite ones because it's just like two people benefiting off of a system that like makes their opposition to each other completely unnecessary. If you find yourself in a similar situation to the squirrel or the cat in this post, I would highly recommend you take advantage of it. It's very rare and it won't last forever. No squirrel deaths, but I saw one deep throat a whole ass hot dog and run off with said hot dog stuffed into that little rodent gullet. That is a pretty visceral way of describing a squirrel's throat, man. I think I've described throats as gullets before though, so I can't even like hate that much. My mom claims she saw the squirrels fucking. Everybody's seen that, man. This is not that impressive, I'm gonna be honest. I won't say I like it, but I do find it interesting and or engaging when people who are fans of other animals have a story involving the animal I'm requesting stories about, and then they just use it as like a soapbox to talk about the animal they like. One time I saw a squirrel that had been ran over and a crow was eating its corpse. It was pretty cool to watch. Crows are great at dodging traffic. Okay, man, yeah, that's the most interesting thing about the scenario you just played out in front of me. That's what I'm really focused on. I'm glad you brought that up, big dog. All right, let's end this off with maybe the most peaceful send-off that any of the squirrels in this video were gonna end up getting. When I was younger, around 14, I found the perfectly intact body of one of the neighborhood squirrels on our back porch. There were no injuries on him. He was just fat as fuck, and I assumed he was older and had a heart attack. Something along along those lines. I buried him in our backyard. Like, this guy died of natural causes, lived a good, gluttonous life, and got a proper burial from someone who found him by pure chance and decided to give him a proper send-off. Like, everything dies. Everybody dies. That's the truth of the world. This guy got to go out decent, and I'm gonna take that as a win considering some of the shit we've been over already. There are several more I could go through, and some that have been submitted since after the process was over, so if this video does well, I might do a follow-up. I just don't think we're gonna beat that, like, suburbia comment, because that shit had like 5 likes when I found it, and I sincerely believe that if it got posted to Tumblr like 10 years ago, it would be in circulation as like a thing that Twitter accounts with the premium subscription would be posting to like farm money off of it. Anyways, thank you to kwytebox for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out Fatal Frame 2 at the first link in the description. You can follow me on Twitter at @withany, that email's in the description as well if you want to send me any video topics. Anyways, piss off.